Hey everyone, and welcome to our Give Live webinar. I'm Matt Cromwell, Head of Support at GiveWP.com and WordImpress.com. Give is an online donation plugin for WordPress. Our goal is to democratize generosity. We do that by making online donation forms as elegant, flexible, and robust as possible, while still being very user-friendly. Unlike third-party platforms, we do not take any commissions from your donations. We leave all of that up to you and your payment gateway of choice, which is our subject today. That enables you to have lower fees, and that means more people and causes can be hosting high-quality donation forms on their websites, which is democratization. This is Give Live. Give Live is a monthly free online webinar. It's all about accepting donations online, particularly with WordPress and with Give. This is now our 5th Give Live webinar. So we're still getting started. We're looking forward to a lot more of these this year. Next month, we're going to be talking about reports and exports with Give specifically. So if you want to know some great ways to export your donor data and do powerful things with it, make sure to mark your calendar for Wednesday, April 12th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We'll be talking about reports and exports with Give, April 12th. Today's topic is about payment gateways, and specifically we'll be talking about Stripe, because I have a guest with me today named Matt Yalowitz. Matt, would you introduce yourself real quick and tell us a little bit about what you do at Stripe?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to meet you all. My name is Matt Yalowitz. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area. Currently live in San Francisco, working at Stripe. I lead our public sector business team. That includes all of our work with educational institutions, governments, political campaigns, and my personal favorite, working with nonprofit organizations as well. And that also includes working with software platforms like Give that help support the nonprofit community. Before Stripe, where I've been for the last couple of years, I was at Google for 8 years. So I've been in the tech industry for about a decade. And really excited to see what some of our partners are also doing with Stripe's technology. So excited to answer any questions that come up over the course of the webinar.
Awesome. Matt, thanks so much for being here. We're definitely going to pin you to the wall on as much as we can.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just do if you guys have questions on Stripe specifically about payment gateways in general, I already see some great activity going on in the chat section, but if you have questions, I'm going to be watching the chat come in, so make sure and put them in there, and we'll incorporate them into our discussion. Here's just a quick overview of what we're going to discuss today. Real quick, I want to open up with a review of Give 1.8, which we just released about 10 days ago, and just some of the highlights there. We're going to do an overview of what payment gateways are specifically, and how Give integrates with payment gateways. And then we're going to jump into Stripe and have Matt show us a little bit about their new dashboard, also about their improved recurring logic that's going to be rolling out over the next months, and alternative payments in Europe, and also fraud protection. So those are going to be some great subjects that we're going to learn about Stripe today from the horse's mouth itself. So let's jump right into Give 1.8. If you didn't see our announcement on our website, go ahead and go to our website. Go to givewp.com/blog. You'll find a whole bunch of categories there. One of them is release notices, and you see a release there about Give 1.8. There's 3 major things that people really enjoy about 1.8. One is we had a big overhaul to our form edit screen. We have a much better process now with, instead of what we call like meta box soup, where it's just a whole bunch of boxes all over the place in the WordPress admin, you have one consolidated area that's tab based. You can flip through there really quickly and configure your form just really quickly. So we're really excited about the new form edit screen and those new tabs. We think that it's going to be a major improvement for everybody. So make sure and upgrade if you're on anything less than 1.8. We have a new settings engine as well. The settings area is all new and much more robust and stable. It's a great admin experience. And then lastly, this is actually a small little update we did that people actually really enjoy a lot. We could just call it button mode. If you go, it's just basically one little button that says donate now. You click on that and a Give form pops up in a modal, and you could do everything right there in the modal. It's a fun little feature that was relatively straightforward to implement, but people really like that one a lot. They could put it in a menu, put it in a sidebar, put it in a footer, put a button wherever you like throughout your whole site, and it makes it really easy for folks to donate right away. Cool. I don't see any specific questions about Give 1.8 yet. I see lots of affection for Give, though. That's great. Love seeing that. We're going to jump into payment gateways. What specifically is a payment gateway? A payment gateway is not a bank. It's actually a way that you can receive funds online. And Matt, make sure and correct me if I misspeak in any way whatsoever. But it's not a bank. It's a way you receive payments online, basically. And that payment gateway then can send those payments to your bank. So when you get a payment gateway of any kind, really, whether it's Stripe or PayPal or Authorize or any of these others, you actually connect your bank to that payment gateway. And when somebody donates through Give, then the payment is sent securely over to the payment gateway, and they process that payment with whatever credit card type that they accept, and that is then stored there. And usually there's a period of time at which it takes until that payment is sent over automatically to your bank. With Stripe, I believe it's 2 business days. Is that right, Matt? Yep. And it differs. Yeah, it differs payment gateway to payment gateway. But I think 2 business days is pretty standard in the industry now at this point. But basically, there's never a time at which a payment gateway just sends it straight to your bank directly. I've never seen one that does that, as far as I know. So why do you need one? Well, you need one because you don't want to be responsible for anybody's credit card information ever, under no circumstance. You're a small business and you have just a simple website, and accepting credit card information through a form where that information is stored on your website is bad news and can get you in tons of serious trouble. You don't want that to ever happen. And you don't want to be responsible for processing that information. It takes tons and tons and tons of security and certifications in order to process credit cards. So you really want to push the burden of all of that onto a payment gateway. And the best way to do that is to connect with them and have your credit card fields actually secured correctly, so that it communicates directly with the payment gateway and does not actually communicate with your website or your server. You don't want that information touching your database or really your server in any way whatsoever. That's the importance of it. Payment gateway is also the only way that you can actually add those credit card fields securely onto your donation form. And yeah, Matt, do you have a comment?
I was just going to mention that the PCI compliance requirements around credit card handling are pretty strict. So it's great to work with a partner that helps alleviate as much of that burden as possible, because it definitely is potentially a big hindrance to accepting card payments online. Also, at a high level, just for some additional background on Stripe, it used to be very, very difficult to get up and running accepting payments online. There were a lot of different relationships that were involved. You had a gateway, a merchant account. You sometimes had to have a direct relationship with Amex, a separate provider if you wanted to do things like recurring billing or other business logic associated with accepting payments online. Stripe's big innovation was centralizing as much of that as possible under one roof and just under the hood of one car. So when you're accepting payments with Stripe, you're not having to set up a separate merchant account, a separate gateway, using Stripe as a single full stack financial solution for transacting payments online. And that's in part what's helped us grow considerably, especially in the nonprofit community.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. I mean, also with each individual credit card type, they have different rates, and you don't want to be responsible for negotiating those rates with them directly, all those kinds of things. Being able to push that responsibility to somebody else who's able to negotiate that in bulk, basically, really helps bring down fees and all those kinds of things as well. PCI compliance is an issue that comes up often. We actually talked about it a bit in last month when we had Locker.io on the show. It is a very complicated subject, but the point with payment gateways and Give specifically is basically pushing the burden of that PCI compliance of the credit card payment onto your payment gateway. It's their responsibility to be PCI compliant. Of course, it is your final responsibility to have your website as PCI compliant as possible. But when you do have a payment gateway that integrates correctly with Give, then basically we're making sure that Give is not going to negatively impact your PCI compliance in any way. That's really important to us. That's a complicated subject that we might try to tackle some other time. But yeah, the payment gateway is a large part of making sure that that happens correctly and well. Another question about payment gateways, are they secure? Absolutely. It depends. The payment gateway itself is secure, but how you communicate with that gateway is another question in particular. And we did talk about that a little bit last month as well. But the overview, the quick snippet overview is basically, specifically with Stripe.js, the JavaScript version of Stripe. It actually is a browser side communication. So your server actually doesn't load up those credit card fields itself. The browser does that. And so when the donor comes to the page, Stripe.js creates those fields, and then when they enter that information, the JavaScript, which is a browser communication, sends that information directly to Stripe, and it does not ever touch your actual website. That's what makes it secure, basically, as long as your site has a SSL certificate on it, as long as that communication happens over HTTPS. That's a really, really fundamental and important part of doing online donations in any form on any website, regardless of whether it's WordPress or something else. That's a major requirement. There was a time at which PayPal, with PayPal Standard, a lot of people are familiar with PayPal Standard, that you fill out the form, you hit donate, and it kicks you over to paypal.com, and then they finish it over there. For the longest time, and I still think it's not fully implemented, they didn't require HTTPS for that transaction, basically, to go from your site over to paypal.com. They are now requiring HTTPS even for PayPal Standard, and in general, so, SSL certificates are becoming the de facto way to do all websites in general. Matt, you have other comments on SSL certificates? It's a big subject as well.
No, I think that covers it pretty well, and we're constantly updating our security processes to make sure we're staying ahead of the game with regards to that, and that can be found on the stripe.com/security page. But there's also a continual evolution of the PCI requirements, and Stripe's also staying on top of that. And part of what a recent product release we had was called Elements, was to make sure we were compliant with the most recent round of PCI requirements. So we're constantly innovating that area and thinking first and foremost with security in mind.
Nice. Cool. So next subject, how Give integrates specifically with payment gateways. And across the board, in general, we really only support payment gateways that do the same sort of functionality that we're talking about. That it's never going to touch your server directly. That it has to go over a secure SSL HTTPS connection, and that communication from your site with Give over to the payment gateway is authenticated with something called an API key. And there's a specific way, that's the way that you're able to communicate securely between your website and Stripe, so that when that communication comes from your website over to Stripe or PayPal or whatnot, that they know that that is coming directly from you and not from anyone else. So besides having HTTPS on there, there's also the added security of an authenticated API key that's really important. So with Give specifically, and all of our payment gateways, typically all you need to do is log into your payment gateway, and where they store this is in different places. The easier they make it to find, the better. And Stripe actually just upgraded the dashboard, which we're going to get to soon, and they made the API keys a root menu item, which I think is a great move, so that you can get your API key right away, because that's what you need. You need two keys, a secret one and a public one, and you just grab those and paste them straight into your Give settings, and you're pretty much ready to go at that point. We try to make it as simple and straightforward as possible. So that's the rundown in general. Same when I'm still looking for questions on anything Give specific or Stripe specific. I see we had a little bit of issues with subscriptions. Light of Hope is saying they had some issues. We're going to make sure that gets resolved. You can contact us via support, like Devin says. If anyone doesn't know Devin Walker, he's actually the creator of Give, one of the co-authors, me and Devin together. And he is our founder, and he basically is a workhorse that gets everything done all the time. Yeah, Devin's here in the chat as well, so make sure to chat with him because he's available now too. Cool. So with no further ado, we're going to go straight into stripe.com. I want to turn it over to Matt. He's going to give us an overview of the new dashboard, which I think is really awesome. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that was a great overview of the payments landscape as well. And I think for nonprofits in particular, payments are so important because donations tend to be the lifeblood of a nonprofit. And being able to accept donations and support your organization is critical. And donations have changed a lot from when people used to mail in checks or handle cash to as collecting donations. And now online seems to be growing as the dominant method for collecting funds for your nonprofit. So as part of that, Stripe is trying to stay ahead of the game with regard to both the latest in payments technology, but also thinking strategically on how can small and medium-sized nonprofits utilize our tools effectively. And you're seeing a range of different ways in which people are doing that. Some folks are trying things like passing along the credit card fee to the donor. So the donor has an option to include that as part of their transaction to cover the costs of making the donation. Some people are adding new innovations like Apple Pay. So there's lots of new stuff coming out there, new ideas. And I would say to be adventurous and cutting edge in what you're trying to do. So I'm going to start out by doing a quick demo of the Stripe dashboard. And then I think there were some questions from our host today, who's going to ask about some recent developments as well in terms of our products. So I'm going to grab the screen right now. And can you see my Stripe demo dashboard?
Yep, looks good.
Great. So this is a demo dashboard. This is not real data. I'm not revealing anyone's private Stripe information, but it's helpful as a way to see what an actual Stripe user would see when they log into the Stripe dashboard. And this, as you recently heard, was just a recently updated version of our dashboard with new UI and new features as well. So at its core, the homepage of the dashboard provides a great way to see gross volume from the account, total of new customers, in this case donors, and the number of payments that have come through the account. You can sort by week, by month, by year, and it's great to see all this data in the account because it's really helpful when you're doing a quick high-level overview. Perhaps the CFO of the nonprofit wants to see what's happening in the account at a really high level, what transfers are coming to the bank account, what disputes there are. A couple high-level things to highlight in this account. Under the Business Settings tab, you can set custom statement descriptors here for what appears on your donors' bank accounts. So on your donors' credit card statements when they make a donation. So that's really important so that whatever is appearing in your donor's card statement is relevant to what they're donating to and to the organization. You can also set up additional information like the name and website of the organization, the support site, in case they have questions about their donation. You can add multiple members of your team as additional users in the dashboard. So you could add people who have administrator access, someone perhaps who just has read and write access, or maybe you need someone who needs read-only access because they don't need to edit the data, they just need to analyze the transactions that are occurring in your Stripe account. We also give the option to do email receipts directly from the Stripe dashboard. So if you wanted to send an email receipt for a successful payment or a refund, that's listed right here in the dashboard as an easy way to do receipts for your donors. We also offer a security history tab here. So to the point earlier on the importance of security, we do offer a full listing here of when people have logged into your account and what the activity that's happening in the account is. Another important thing is perhaps you have multiple Stripe accounts that you're managing, or one organization has multiple bank accounts and different Stripe accounts for different reasons. You can easily set up new accounts right here from within the Stripe dashboard, and then toggle between those different accounts from within the homepage here. The last thing I'll share on the general side is on the profile page up here. This is where you can add additional security settings like two-step authentication to your account. And you can set up email notifications to you, the account owner, for when things are happening like disputes or successful payments. So I'll pause there for a second just to see if there are any questions.
We're having some good side conversations about lots of subjects, but no direct questions yet. But
sounds good. Well, I'll go ahead and jump in then right away to the next part of the dashboard, which is the payments tab. And this is where you can see a history of the payments that have occurred in your account. And the neat thing about this is, along with the list of payments here, in this test account, there are 900 test payments. You can actually filter these payments by different factors like date, amount, status of the payment, whether it was successful or failed, whether it was refunded, captured, disputed status, as well as the payment source, whether it came from a card, perhaps use an alternative payment source like a bank account or a Bitcoin to fund this specific payment. So you can filter by those factors. Let's say we do last 30 days, and then it will organize the account by what's happened in the last 30 days. So I'm going to jump back now. In addition, you can export, after you've done a filter, all those fields, and that will export into a CSV file where you can collect all the information. You can also create a payment directly in the Stripe dashboard. Again, this would not be PCI compliant because you're handling the card details directly, but as a one-off, it is possible to, if you need to handle the card information directly, make a charge through the dashboard. When you click into an individual payment, you'll get additional information. First of all, you're going to see whether or not the payment was successful. If you did want to do a refund, or perhaps someone accidentally donated more than they were supposed to or entered the wrong amount, you could do a partial refund or a full refund of the payment. If you see a fraudulent payment, you can also refund and report fraud on that payment too. Under payment details, we'll also list, if there's a Stripe risk evaluation, what that evaluation is. In this case, just a normal risk evaluation on this payment. It wasn't risky. So under amount, you can see $12, and then you can see the Stripe processing fee of 65 cents. You can see the date the transaction occurred. You also have the option of passing through metadata. Perhaps there are custom fields that you want to collect that aren't included by default with these card fields. You can pass up to 20 individual metadata fields through within a transaction. So that could be something like unique customer ID that you use to keep track of your donors on the back end of your database. Here's the information on the card that was used, including whether it passed zip code check, the origin of the card, the type of the card, and the last 4 digits, which don't fall under PCI scope. And then some logs and history data as well. Going back to the payments tab, we also give you a listing of disputes here. So if someone does dispute a payment, it's not that common in the nonprofit space, but you can see in this tab the ability to quickly and easily respond to disputes from within the Stripe dashboard and email a customer as a result. We'll let you know if the dispute is open, lost, if it's won, and the reason for the dispute. Finally, we'll also let you know balances that have accrued in the account. And that ties into the next section, which is on transfers. We'll let you know the transfers that are scheduled for the account and when they're expected to hit the bank account. We'll also let you know past deposits that have occurred. The neat thing about that is that when you're looking at these past deposits, again, this is test data, so unfortunately, it doesn't always work with the test account, but you'll be able to see a full list of all the transactions that made up that deposit into your bank account. So let's see if we can get one of these to work. Usually you'll see a full listing right here, though, of all the transactions that made up that specific transfer. So it makes reconciliation that much easier. The other thing you can do is you can actually save customers in the dashboard or in your Stripe account. So if you decided that you want to save a user for either a recurring donation or to make it easier next time that person wants to donate, you can save their credit card information as well as information on that donor. For example, if they have a subscription associated with their account, here they have an recurring donation, or in this case, it's an active subscription of an annual yearly plan. You could do that by saving the card information with Stripe and saving the individual as a customer object. And like the Payments tab, you can filter and sort customers as well, and then export those customers or create a new customer directly in the dashboard. So once you have a specific payment associated with a customer, that's when you'll see that payment occurring in this Customer tab.
Matt, we had one question from Priscilla. She actually wanted to see if there's a way to filter payments to see the failed payments.
Yep, absolutely. So you could do status, because sometimes the bank will decline a payment for whatever reason. Maybe it's a stolen credit card. Here I filtered by disputed status, and these are the 4 disputed payments out of the 900 total payments. And when you click into the account, you can see payment was disputed.
Is there a failed though? Like for example, if their card gets expired, it's a recurring subscription, perhaps, and
It's failed.
There it is. Yep, there it is. Status is failed. Perfect.
So here the bank didn't return details on the decline, and that's unfortunately the most common. But whenever there is additional details on the decline, we will pass those through as well.
I actually was cruising through the Stripe documentation and blog today. Priscilla, I hope you saw that where Matt just pointed out how you can filter the is failed. It's right there under status. I was cruising through the documentation and blog, and I saw a feature that I'm not sure when it rolled out, but it's a card recovery feature. And one way or another, you're able to update people's credit cards on the fly in one way or another. Do you know what I'm referring to?
In terms of updating credit cards, so would this be credit card account updater?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yep. So when there are credit cards that expire, either because they have expired just on the normal lifetime of the credit card has expired and the expiration date has come, or if a card is lost or stolen and needs to be replaced. In all those situations, there's an agreement that the cardholder has with the card network, whether it's Amex, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, that those card networks can update the new credit card information with participants in the credit card updater program, so that if you do have a donor who's on recurring monthly donations, we'll automatically update their credit card on our back end so that you don't have to go back to that donor to collect a new credit card number.
Awesome. That's a really great feature, because I remember years ago that was always a struggle for me when I was dealing with hosting clients, that their credit card the expiration date would expire and then they wouldn't get back to me, and then I got to track them down again and blah blah blah.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a huge, I think, bonus of using the Stripe platform is that ability to have credit cards automatically updated. And if you're curious about what credit cards have been updated, you can actually go to webhooks. And webhooks are notifications on events that are happening in your Stripe account, then get sent to you so that you can action those events as you see necessary. But for example, there are lots of different types of webhooks happening for anything that is going on in your account. But for example, when a card is updated, let's see if we can find. Go back one. There is a webhook that fires when there is a credit card update that happens. So if we want to add an endpoint to your account, if you want to select a specific event, there's actually a webhook that lets you know that the card has been updated. So these are all the webhooks that are happening in the account. It's actually a good segue. So as you can see, almost every action that happens in the account, there's a different event associated with it, whether there's an order created, whether there was an order failed. So if you have a developer on your staff who can work with you to implement webhooks, it's really helpful if you have a specific process in place. For For example, when a transfer fails, or if there's a charge that failed, or something else happens in the account that you want to know about, you can set up webhooks so that you're automatically notified.
Nice. Posting the link to that log announcement in the chat right now for folks.
And then the other thing I would note too in the account, this is the last key thing to highlight, is that there are two sections on subscriptions and Radar. Radar, we're not going to see actual data here because it's a fake account, but Radar is our fraud prevention tool that helps prevent against transaction fraud. So it lets you set up things like a review queue of payments if they meet certain criteria. So you can review the payment before it goes through to make sure it's a real payment. And rules you can set up so that when you're managing a rule, you could say, I want to block all payments from these parameters or from this country or something like that. You can set up rules that have to be followed before a payment is accepted. So that helps prevent against transaction fraud, but we also surface a lot of data on any payments that were blocked or deemed risky by Stripe. Under the subscriptions tab, that's what a lot of nonprofits use to manage their recurring donors. And it's really easy to see right here the number of customers who have a active plan associated with them, but it's super easy to set up a plan. Here there are some sample plans, $500 monthly donation. If you want to create a new plan, it's as easy as putting in the plan ID, the name, the currency, the amount, the interval that you want to have that plan fire, and then perhaps you want to wait a few days, a trial period before the plan activates. And you can also put a statement, a custom statement descriptor for that plan in particular if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll click into a plan, you can see the active subscriptions and individuals who are on that plan. So it's a really great, easy way to do recurring donations.
Yep, that's great. I've always done that. Not always, but most often done that through the customer section. I actually go to a specific customer and it already has their credit card on file, and I just go down and do add subscription. Exactly.
Right too.
Yep, it's always been
add a plan right there. Choose one of the active plans.
I like that feature.
And then it's as easy as that. It's done. And then you create the subscription, and you're done.
Yep.
So.
One thing I wanted to hear a little bit more about in particular is you mentioned that there was going to be some improved logic going into the recurring payments feature, and we'd love to hear about that. We actually rolled out version 1.3 of our Give recurring add-on just last week, and it has a really great feature in it that we're calling subscription syncing. Basically, the communication between your website and and Stripe might get out of sync for one reason or another. Maybe your website goes down and Stripe sends a signal and it just doesn't get there. So then all of a sudden your Give data is different than your Stripe data. And so in order to repair that, we created this subscription syncing feature, and we have a blog post on that as well. And that's so far that's really helping a lot of people out. So we like that, but we'd love to hear a little bit more about what you have in store with subscriptions.
Sure. So we're constantly launching new tools for subscriptions. Some of the earliest ones are allowing multiple subscriptions on an individual, and we'll be continuing to invest and launch in those areas in the coming months, because I think that recurring logic ability, whether you're a nonprofit or a retail store that's doing, let's say, monthly box of goods, there's a lot of options there, and having more complex subscription logic is something we'd like to support in the long run as well. I should also add that another big thing I think that you wanted me to talk about was under payments, you can filter by sources, and you may have seen under payment source that along with card and ACH or bank account, we do have a number of payment methods that are relatively prominent in Europe. So in Europe, it's not always credit card that is the dominant form of payments for online transactions. Sometimes it's Bettencourt, GiroPay, Ideal, SoFort, or SEPA. And some of our new APIs allow you to, it's called the Sources API, allows you to connect to these alternative payment methods beyond credit card through your Stripe account. And that way you have a single Stripe integration, but now you can accept payments beyond just credit card, debit card. In the US, that includes ACH as well, or eCheck. And for large dollar donations, the price point is much lower on those transactions.
Yeah, We made sure to roll out the ACH integration as quickly as we could because that is really attractive for nonprofit organizations. That is handled via a service called Plaid, which is a really cool service. I really like it because of the way that it basically, like other ACH type features that I've seen, you have to actually send like these micropayments where it's like they send like 2 cents somewhere, and then you have to, the donor then has to verify that the 2 cents came out, or actually no, came in. That somebody basically the payment gateway gives the donor 2 cents, and they have to verify, oh, I got 2 cents, and that's just a hassle. You never know if the donor is going to verify that or not. But it seems like with Plaid, basically, you're authenticating the bank transfer with your online credentials, which I think is a really smart way to do it. Cool.
I think we're seeing more and more of ACH. Just again, it's an older system, so the chargeback protections aren't necessarily there, like with credit card and debit card. People, there aren't the same protections as with PCI compliance, but which covers credit cards, not bank account details. But again, for large dollar donations, maybe over $100,000, it's certainly going to be more cost effective.
Yep, for sure. Or even just over the course of the year as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. You also wanted to talk a little bit about Radar more in detail, and what you have in store for that over this year.
Absolutely. And before I jump into Radar, I saw that you mentioned there are a couple of questions. Are there outstanding questions as well?
Oh, actually, I think there was actually one more. Yeah, from Light Up Hope. They said, is it possible to send an automatic alert to the donor if a credit card fails on a subscription?
If a credit card fails on a subscription. So jumping back, I'm going to share my screen again. So jumping back into the account, there are email notifications that can happen, let's see, when a refund or a successful payment happens, but that doesn't necessarily address that issue when there's a payment failure. And under Profile, you can also set up notifications internally for these things like disputes or payment reviews. What you could do is, if there is a payment that fails, what you're going to see is, let's go back to the Payments tab. You can filter by status, a failed payment. In a failed payment, you're going to see as part of the account record that there was a decline from the bank. Let's see if we can look at the actual information that mentions the decline. So here's the error code. Your card was declined. So what you could do is, under webhooks, you could set up a webhook for your account for when there's a failure. Let's see. Charge failed right there. So you could set up a webhook so you get notified that way, and that could generate an email in your system to the user on the failed payment.
Yeah, that's actually a subject that comes up often with some of our users who might not be as tech savvy. And I don't want to speak for you, Matt, but I think Stripe has a really interesting approach to being a payment gateway in terms of that they're like, we're a payment gateway and nothing else. We're not going to be your email service. We're not going to be your CRM, but we're going to give you all the hooks so that you can do those things with other services that are made for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would add that, in a lot of ways, payment gateways, and this is why I try to stay away from payment gateway when describing Stripe, in part because it used to be that, again, there were all these different pieces you had to put together to build a successful online transactions program. Since Stripe does serve the purpose of merchant account and gateway, all these things are now bundled into one, plus things like fraud, which I can talk a little bit more about in a second, subscription logic. There's quite a bit more packed into Stripe. And while we do allow webhooks to then augment the functionality beyond our platform, it is a pretty full-featured set of tools to allow you to run many parts of your business. Now, when you start getting to specific customizations, you're absolutely right. That's where you'll have to look at specific integrations. One thing we have done, I think this represents a lot of the power of Stripe, is And jumping back to my screen share, we have a Works with Stripe page. If you just Google Works with Stripe, it should come up. And it's almost like the Stripe app store of sorts, in that these are pre-built tools and products that help your business or nonprofit do more with Stripe. And I think Give is on here as well. Fundraising.
I'm not sure we are, but we're looking forward to it.
If not, then we should have you up here. But like different categories, if you need to do accounting or analytics, perhaps you wanted to figure out a way to do invoicing. There's a bunch of tools and integrations here. Many of these use Stripe's webhooks to integrate and work well with your Stripe account. So just wanted to highlight that really quick.
Yep.
All the featured integrations.
Yep. No, those are great. We've looked into a few services, like there's one, Baremetrics is a really good one that does some great stuff with Stripe, and Churn Buster is another one we keep looking into, things that focus on the recurring aspect of payments, and that they give you kind of a UI and some additional tools and features. And I'm certain that they are all triggered from the Stripe webhooks. So that's great. Cool. Well, I think our questions have slowed down quite a bit, and we've covered pretty much the major items. Matt, again, do you have anything you want to wrap up with at all?
I think the last couple of things to mention are, one, on the radar front, I don't think there's as much, again, of a problem with transaction fraud with nonprofits, because it's not like you're shipping a retail good and then potentially going to lose a lot of inventory with fraud. But at the same time, sometimes fraudsters will try to do things like test a bunch of stolen credit cards for low dollar amounts on a nonprofit giving page. If you see something like that happen, sometimes it's helpful to put up a protection like a CACHPA or some type of automated program to help prevent your website from being used to test stolen credit cards. The other thing to think about with transaction fraud is that Radar is meant to give you better analytics about that, because every different nonprofit is going to have a unique profile of where there might be fraudulent charges. Some might have zero, and some might have more. Depends, I think, on who your donors are as well. I think keeping up to date on the Stripe blog is a great place to learn about new payments related innovations. And if you have any questions too, we have a support team both on the technical side with an IRC chat room, but also more general account questions at support@stripe.com.
Nice. Yeah, we do get some customers using Give who report that they're getting a lot of spam donations. Typically, what we say is we say, you know what, you can Give has a feature where you can set a minimum donation amount. That sometimes helps prevent that, because they're going to want to run those spam donations, want to run $1 donations to test the card. But if you make the minimum, force the minimum to be $10, even $20, $25 sometimes, then that helps weed some of that out automatically. We really don't want folks using a CAPTCHA, just because it just slows down donations, but sometimes it's unavoidable. So we have a snippet for folks. Yeah, sorry, I think I got you cut off there. What'd you say?
Oh, I was saying that's a really good point about CAPTCHA. It does slow down the process quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we try really hard to make donations as seamless and easy as possible, and CAPTCHA just gets in the way. But Google is rolling out basically its next generation of CAPTCHA, which they're calling an invisible CAPTCHA. It basically doesn't even show up in the form at all if they don't consider you a threat. We are looking really closely at how that rolls out, and we might be integrating that in Give in the future once it's stable and reliable. But that might be a really good tool in the future, but we just have to see what happens there. Yeah, setting that minimum donation amount, I think, is a really good preventative measure. Also, because it's just better for the fees, the payment gateway fees, honestly. If you're accepting a $1 donation, like, you're really only getting like 60 cents in the end of that dollar. Which is a much larger chunk of the donation than if you're doing $10 or $20 minimum. It just depends on your donation, your donor audience and your donor base. But I always try to recommend a minimum donation amount as much as possible. Cool. Thanks so much, Matt. Really, really appreciate you being here. And it was so great to hear about what's coming up with Stripe and what you guys are doing. It's really an awesome product. We're really proud to be integrating with it, and we try to track everything you guys are doing and try to leverage as much of it as possible for our users. It's definitely one of our highest used gateways on our site on our platform. So it's a really important partnership for us. So thanks so much for being here, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Everybody, tune in next month, April 12th, 5 p.m. We're going to talk about reports and exports in Give. Set your calendar. Thanks so much. Have a good day. Bye.